Hello and welcome. Today we talk about Xala by Sembène Ousmane. And Ousmane is a Senegalese novelist, and the word Xala in Wolof, which is a Senegalese language, one of the languages of Senegal, the word Xala means a curse. And so the novel is about a person who has been cursed with temporary sexual impotency. And just to give you a context of the novel, I would tell you a little bit about Senegal and the country and what happens there in the novel. Um, so Senegal is on the west coast of Africa, and unlike other African countries, it has been relatively peaceful and also relatively wealthy because of its strategic location. It enjoys great tourism also, so it is relatively a more prosperous nation compared to other African countries. But having said that, I would still say that no country is without its problems, and especially developing countries or former colonies. And Hala is actually about the socio-cultural issues that a country faces after its freedom from colonial power. This is just to give us context. Senegal was is a former French colony, and the unique thing about Senegal is that even though the country gained independence in 1960, France did not really leave the country alone, and therefore much of Senegalese economy depended, and then also of other erstwhile French empire. Many of these economies actually depended upon France. For instance, even though Senegal was an independent country, its currency still remained the West African franc. So as a country, as an economy, they still depended upon the French, and upon the economy of France. Um, and similarly, another context of a part of their context is that their first president, Leopold Sedar Senghor, was actually considered to be very, say, subservient to the French. He was married to a French woman, and much of his own politics did not really defy the French. And although he was a very well known writer, and he was eventually he's a celebrated author, he became somewhat unpopular amongst his people, and particularly the people who saw him as a new colonist. uh, People saw him as somewhat subservient to France, and so this is one of the quotations, one of the comments that he had. He seems to have said, he says, "In Africa, when children have grown up, they leave their parents' hut and build a hut of their own by its side. Believe me, we don't want to leave the French compound. We have grown up in it, and it is good to be alive in it. We simply want to build our own huts." So even though he suggests that they have become independent, he didn't really believe in complete cultural independence from France. And this kind of a choice is clearly a problem to the novelist that we are talking about today. And many of the other nationalists or nativists would not really agree with the stand that Senghor had taken. And the novelist that we are talking about, Sembene, has been very defiant of was very defiant of the Senegalese president of that time. Here, let me take a little while to discuss basics of neocolonialism for people who do not know. Neocolonialism is the way former imperial powers retained control over their erstwhile colonies by dominating their economy. So, even though the imperial power has left the country, it continues to dominate it, as the newly formed country still is dependent upon it for aid or for funding. Therefore, culturally too, the former imperial power remains superior. So, the big multinationals that dominate the markets of the world, and especially the markets of the developing countries, mostly would belong to either Europe or America, and this is a form of new colonialism. And as a result, the culture of Europe and America would automatically be considered to be superior. We see aspects of neocolonialism through the novel, and that's the reason this concept is very important for our understanding. And coming back to Senegal, the country is mostly a Muslim nation, but there are many ethnicities, and we know if this about Africa, that Africa and African countries are basically very very rich in tribes, and so there are many ethnicities, and Christianity is also one of its minorities, and Wolof is the language which many people speak, in fact most people speak, but there are many other tribes and many other languages as well. So Wolof is the language which is mostly spoken by many people in Senegal, and the novel is also about a Wolof speaking Muslim man or a Muslim family in living in urban Dakar, and Dakar is also the capital of Senegal. So now let me tell you a little bit about the author Ousmane as well. So Ousmane is was born in Casamance, which is a multi-ethnic village in Senegal. But his life was actually full of trials and tribulations. He's actually traveled across the world even before he became this famous novelist and also a filmmaker. He was the son of a fisherman, so he's really grown from the very say low middle class family background, and he went to a French school, and but he had to work as a manual laborer, and as a matter of fact, although he was the son of a fisherman, he would suffer seasickness, so he was not able to do the same work as his father, and so he eventually became a manual laborer. He worked also on the docks, and he even participated in World War II on behalf of the French, because at that point of time Senegal was a French colony, and he also took part in a very famous strike which was called the railroad strike at that time. And eventually, while he was working and while he was working as a manual laborer, he had met with an accident, and that accident actually made him unable to work for some time in his life, and that's when he took to reading, and he eventually wrote his novels. His first novel, which was written in 1956, was called The Black Docker. I'm reading the titles of the English translations. He of course wrote in French, and these works have later on been translated into English. And later on, when he became somewhat popular as a novelist, he also learned filmmaking from Russia, and this Russian connection stays as he is a Marxist. We see elements of Marxism or elements of his political beliefs in the novel as well. So he uses both the film as well as the novel to tell his story. And Xala is actually both a novel and a film. He wrote it as a novel, of course, and then he also made it in the form of a film, and you can watch it. The film is easily available on YouTube. So, so Xala is basically a story of a man um, uh, called El Haji Adbu Kedir Bai, and he is a very well-to-do person. He has been to Hajj, so he has been anointed in his society, and the word El Haji also mean that he is a very honorable Muslim. Because he's an honorable Muslim and he's been to Hajj, the name itself has Haji in its title, and his wife Aja Awa Asto and is also a devout. So Al Haji is not a practicing Christian, not a practicing Muslim, but Aja Awa Asto she's a devout Muslim, although before her marriage to El Haji, she was a Christian and her name was Renee. And she is a very traditional devout Muslim. She prays, she does whatever is required of a believing and practicing Christian. The El Haji is actually married twice already, and he's going to be married a third time. So his first wife is called Aja Awa Esto. Now the word Aja is for represents the fact that she is also with El Haji. She has also been to Hajj, so she has also been given this title Aja. She's called Awa because she's the first wife of El Haji. And if you know the word Eve, when it is translated into even many South Asian languages, Eve is translated, or the say the Eastern name or the African name of Eve is Awa. So her name is Awa. She's the first wife of El Haji. There is a second wife of El Haji. Her name is Omi Ndoye, and Omi is very modern in her outlook. She is, she is. She wants to be very, very French in her mannerisms. She wears Western dresses, and both these wives somewhat get along, but there is an element of jealousy, as we could imagine, which would happen in families of this sort. And the third wife is called Ngon, and in the novel we don't really get to hear much from Ngon. And she is a young woman. El Haji is really attracted to her, but he doesn't really know Ngon. We don't, and as a result, the audience also doesn't really get to know the kind of a person she would be. So she is just a representative in the novel. The task that she does in the novel is just to reveal to El Haji that he has become important. And Rama is another character which is an important character. Rama is actually the eldest daughter of El Haji, and she is a very strong person, and she's an idealist. She's very clear about her political views. She has a revolutionary fervor. She also opposes her father's decision to marry a third time, and she's also studying at the university and campaigns about spreading Wolof as the language. So she is an important character. So El Haji actually leads a very comfortable life. He has a lot of money. He owns villas, and he has two villas of both his wives, and both his wives are staying in each villa, and he divides his time between them. Um, and this particular extract from the novel talks about how he had tried to create a balance between these two wives, and he has 11 children in all, and each of these families had its own villa. Being a paid practical African, he has he provided a minibus for their domestic use. So he's a very affluent, a very rich man, and this third marriage for him is just to make him become more popular amongst the people that he is with. And so this is the basic setting of the novel, and the story unfolds that after a very lavish wedding, El Haji, on his third wedding night, on the wedding night of his third marriage, he realizes that he has now become important. He seems to have a performance issue, and he is therefore unable to consummate his third marriage. Now, this fact is known to Ngon's aunt, which is another important character. Her name is written as Betty, who is characterized as an extremely fussy, intrusive aunt. And as a part of post-marriage rituals, the consummation is supposed to be celebrated, and therefore it is known to people outside the marriage. And El Haji has that is it's known to people outside the marriage that El Haji really has this ongoing issue. Um, Now he is told that this issue or this impotency is being caused because of a curse or a hala, and the rest of the novel is about him trying to undo this curse. And also, the news about his curse, news about his impotency, really spreads across, and eventually, people gossip about him. So the hala actually becomes this curse, this impotency actually becomes an existential crisis for him. He is really, after he wants to do anything that is under his power to get rid of this curse. Um, so this is just a basic plot of the novel. I would talk about the analysis and other discussion of the novel in my next video.